Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. The show is about to start. Hey guys, what's up? This is Phoebe.
And this is Mike.
You're listening to the Mike and Phoebe Show. Today's guest, we are talking with Dr. Daniel MacDonald. Dr. Daniel MacDonald is an associate professor and chair at the Department of Economics at Cal State San Bernardino. And also joining is Daniel Rodriguez, Professor MacDonald's student assistant. Welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Dr. MacDonald was a keynote speaker at City of Hemet Business Economics Summit and one of the panelists, and we met just at the event a few weeks ago. And he is an associate professor and chair of the economics department, Cal State University, San Bernardino. He has published in academic journals in the field of labor economics, economic history, and consumer economics. He is the founder of Inland Empire Dynamic Insights, LLC, and he writes a free weekly newsletter on Substack titled Inland Empire Economic Intelligence. He lives in Redlands with his wife and 8-year-old daughter. Daniel Rodriguez is currently pursuing his bachelor's degree in economics at Cal State University of San Bernardino. He lives in Highland, California. He is a student assistant to Dr. MacDonald. He plans on pursuing his master's in economics after he graduates this December, and his goal is to be involved in the economic development across the Inland Empire. I am so excited to have both of you on the podcast. We have a lot of interesting topics to talk about. So let's jump right into it. We got a nice, heavy question to start us off. Are we in a recession?
Well, thanks, Phoebe, and thanks, Mike. Thank you both for having me on the podcast. It's really great to be on such a storied podcast as yours. I know you've had some amazing guests on, including Ben Sandoval down in Hemet, and I'm just so happy to be here and be a part of such an amazing project and amazing group. So thanks for having me. As I speak, I'm going to refer at times to my assistant, Daniel Rodriguez, who will add a little bit to what I'm saying and just offer his own thoughts as a student of economics. And so, are we in a recession? That's a very interesting question. You might be surprised, but it's actually one of the easiest questions to answer. No, we are not in a recession. A recession is defined as negative GDP growth, which is when the size of the economy shrinks. And as of December of 2024, which is the most recent month that we have data, the national economy is still expanding. Recessions are usually accompanied by higher unemployment rates and job losses. Nationally in Southern California, we're just not seeing that. Jobs are still growing. Unemployment rates are still low in the 4.5% to 5% range. Another thing that we usually see during recessions is people stop investing. And I'm not referring to the stock market. I'm referring to real investment in technology or buildings or machinery. And there's no evidence that this is happening. Businesses are feeling good. They're staying the course, especially with all the advances in AI. I would argue that maybe even if we do have a recession later this year, it might be mild just because there's so many other positives that are happening right now in the economy. It's not to say that a recession will not happen later, but we just first need to see more signs that some of the signs that I mentioned about jobs slowing down or unemployment going up, and we're just not seeing that. There are some worrying signs that I would, offer a little bit of caution on. The big one is interest rates. So I just talked about, investors are still feeling good. They still want to invest in the economy, but interest rates are the cost of borrowing, and they're also the cost of home ownership, right? And interest rates have been high. Home sales have been slow for 2 going on 3 years now. And I'm not sure how much the housing market can take. One of the other ways that interest rates affect all of us is through the loans that we have to pay back for our cars or credit cards. And if people start not being able to pay those loans back because of the interest rates, that can be a little bit of a worrying sign too. So there are some worrying signs. It's not like it's a completely rosy picture, but I think that, when you read the headlines, there's a lot of kind of doom and gloom out there, and that it's not necessarily what we're actually seeing. But Daniel might have a little bit more to add. Do you want to add something to that, Daniel?
Yeah. Well, first off, Mike and Phoebe, thank you so much for having us on. And to just kind of go off of what Dr. MacDonald was saying, I would agree. We're not in a recession. I know with all the things that you may see in the media right now, especially as of recently with all the tariffs, it's easy to think that we're in a recession or at least heading there. But we, like Dr. MacDonald said, we were growing as of December. And so without the new data, we can't really say that we're in a recession just yet. I think it just might be a little too soon to say that. And going back to the investment in America, I don't think that'll be slowing down anytime soon. And investment in technology and machinery, they are going to take some time to develop. But if there's one thing that you can say about the tariffs is that they do incentivize investment in America. The downside is that we would have to wait quite some time to see the results of that.
I'm glad that you talked about tariffs a little bit because that's such a hot topic. And going back to this data that you guys have, and maybe I missed it, how often does this new data come out, and how do they find this data, based on what kind of research?
Sure. So the unemployment data come from labor market research. They survey about 50,000 households every month. So it's a pretty good nationally representative data set when it comes to labor market statistics. For GDP, the data are a little bit more delayed because, as you can imagine, we have a $23 trillion economy. And so it takes a lot of time to add up all of the different expenditures that businesses do. But these are data that are coming from national sources. These are data that are, cited in the media and that, take a lot of time to collect. And that's why there is a delay with them. So the labor market data comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics based on a survey of about 50,000 households. And I misspoke a little bit. That data we have up until maybe February, March, but then the GDP data come from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and those data do take a little bit more time. And the latest data we have for that is Q4 of 2024, so December of 2024.
So when is the next anticipated data going to be out later on at the end of this quarter?
That's right. So we'll get the Q1 estimates in maybe 1 or 2 months, and that will give us the first look at 2025, Q1 2025. How are we looking under, the new administration, under these new policies, and we'll start to see how things are affected. But even with the most recent data from Q4 of December, we had a big increase in consumption and consumer expenditures. And one of the reasons was because of anticipated tariffs, right? People started buying things and businesses started stockpiling precisely because they were worried that there might be some trade restrictions down the line. So, it's important to keep a level head with the data and to think about things over a longer time. That's, it sounds more boring, but that's kind of what economists do. Like, that's my motto, is make the economy boring again. Is I just think that it's important not to get too excited and too worked up with things and try to take a longer view of how the economy is going.
Yeah, so for the first quarter of last year compared to the first quarter of this year, what kind of things do you see different?
We are seeing a little bit of an increase in unemployment rates. So we are seeing a little bit of an upward tick in unemployment, but it's very, very mild, maybe 0.1 or 0.2 percentage points. We're also seeing year over year a change in inflation, and then that's been going in the positive direction. So inflation has cooled compared to Q1 of 2024. We actually just got new inflation numbers in just this morning, literally hot off the presses, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm up at that hour on the Pacific time, and I'm I'm getting that news before pretty much anyone else is awake. But that's how they work. All of these major news releases are on an East Coast schedule. And yeah, it showed that inflation ticked slightly downward in March compared to a year earlier. So aside from the slightly higher unemployment rate and the slightly and the lower inflation, things have remained pretty much the same. So interest rates have not really changed at all. 30-year mortgage rates have not changed year over year. And that's one of the reasons why in the Hemet Economic Summit that you guys mentioned, I was saying that I don't expect much of a difference this year in the real estate, the residential real estate market compared to last year, just because interest rates have not really come down. And so we expect very similar dynamics in 2024, in 2025 as well.
So going back to inflation, being that you just got the numbers this morning, do you see that trend to continue to go down, or what kind of trend do you see happening?
Right. It is interesting because inflation is much cooler than it was 2 years ago. But that's not enough for people. I think a lot of people don't just want inflation to start cooling down, but they actually want prices to drop, right? That's my sense from most people, is that, oh, well, okay, maybe the price increases are not as fast as they were before, but that's not really what I want. I want the price of milk to come down. I want the price of eggs to come down. And there is a difference, right, between inflation cooling down, which means slower price growth, and then prices dropping, which is actually called deflation, right? It's actually the opposite of inflation. When prices drop, that's called deflation. And that's just very rare. So I think that inflation will continue to cool down. But I don't think we're going to get deflation. We're not going to see, the price of a dozen eggs come down to $5 or, whatever it is. And stop asking me about the price of eggs. As an economist, I've been literally I've become an expert, right, on that for so long. Maybe I can create a new word, egonomics. I just literally came up with that now, right? But I feel like I think it could, it could be somebody's, dissertation or, research paper. But anyway, just getting back on topic, right? Just one thing that is really frustrating right now about inflation is the tariffs, right? There are a lot of tariffs on the horizon, and that will increase the price of goods. Daniel was saying earlier that tariffs can boost American investment. But before they boost American investment, they can boost American prices, right? Because basically American firms that are providing the same goods and services as you can find internationally, well, if all of a sudden the prices of the international goods and services are higher, what's to stop an American firm from raising their prices a little bit, right? Because they're not forced to be as competitive anymore. The higher tariffs mean that they can charge a little higher prices. Now, the administration has tried to, threaten people and say, don't you dare raise prices. But that's economics, right? That's economics, is that when prices go up, other people feel a little bit more, more comfortable with raising their prices as well. Daniel, do you have anything to add about the tariffs and whether you think that's going to cause inflation to, either cool down or not cool down?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of basically said it. I mean, these tariffs it's not gonna make things easier. It's not gonna make it easier for inflation to cool down. Because they are inflationary. Any business that suddenly has to pay more for the production of their product will almost always pass that cost down to the consumer. Unless firms are willing to take a reduction in their profit margins due to the higher production costs, as well as keeping their prices the same, we're going to see prices rise, especially since we import so much from other countries. So yeah, they definitely would make things a lot harder in terms of inflation.
And Dr. MacDonald, you spoke earlier about real estate and what your thoughts are about renting and buying a house. But if someone else was looking in the market to buy a house or rent, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a nice question. I actually had a younger participant at the Economic Summit in Hemet ask me this, and I love getting questions like that from younger people in the audience who are a little bit scared, right? To be honest, about buying a house and what that would entail. And the short answer is that it's never the right time to buy a house, right? I remember when we bought our first condo with my wife. My daughter was 9 months old. We wanted to wait a little longer, honestly, before we purchased a home. But the condo we were renting was going up for sale. And so we bought the house because we didn't want to move. When we moved into our house in September 2020, it was a decision that unfortunately forced us to buy something that was much more expensive than what we were originally planning. And that's because in September 2020, this was like those days of the pandemic, where everybody was kind of tired of being inside and wanted to get out of the house and, maybe buy a new house just because they were sick of being in their houses for the last 6 months. And so the short answer is just, it never is the best time to buy, but it's always better than renting, right? And that's the key point here. Buying is still better than renting because you're saving every time you pay your mortgage, right? That's savings that's going in. That's the best way to think about it. And it is an investment, right? You're investing in your future. If you've been saving up for a down payment, I would say go for it now. It's true that interest rates are high, but precisely for that reason, mortgage lenders want to be competitive. They want to still get your business. That's what they're in the market for, right? To make money off of lending money to people so they can buy homes. And so they're looking for ways to help you out. There are down payment support programs throughout the state and the county that you can look into. So it's always a good idea, I think, to start planning for buying a house. And, there are certainly very affordable areas of San Bernardino and Riverside County, including beautiful areas like Hemet. As I mentioned in my economic summit, it has one of the lowest priced markets in Riverside County and Southern Riverside County. And so take advantage. Hemet is a beautiful city. It's growing. You had Ben Sandoval on your podcast. He talked about all the great things that they're doing out there, the skateboarding competition and the new markets that are being developed. So you've got people that really want your business, and they'll do something. They'll try to help you out when they can. And so it's always a good idea, I think, to buy a home.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you're saying, Dr. MacDonald, because when Mike and I were paying for our mortgage, this is now probably 10 years ago or so. The amount that we were paying is so much less than the amount that they're charging now for rent, or even back then 10 years ago when we were living in the high desert. I mean, we were lucky that we were paying less than $600 for our mortgage. And now we were just looking around the market just for fun. And I mean, it was fun to see the new places and new apartments, new condos and stuff. But when we look at the pricing, is astronomical. It was like $2,500 for a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment.
Yeah, some of these apartments are way more than what your actual mortgage would be there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would definitely agree with you. It is better to buy if you're able to afford it rather than rent, because if you can afford the rent, you could definitely afford the mortgage, seems like.
Pretty much.
I agree. And, when you compare the current rents to your current, whatever you pay on your mortgage, it's usually a good deal. Daniel, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, from my experience, I have very little experience in buying a home. A couple years back, there was a point in time where I took a break from school, actually. This was during COVID when everything was online, and worked full time as a sales manager. And during that time, my mom and I looked into buying a home. And the question that I kept asking myself throughout the entire process was, can we afford the mortgage? I didn't care about the interest rate. I didn't care about all those other things, but all I cared about was whether or not we had the income to make the payment, as well as being able to live comfortably without having to penny pinch every single week. So long story short, we did end up getting approved for a mortgage, but our options were very limited at the time. So like the mortgage was going to be too high for us to, comfortably pay long term. And so in our situation, it was better for us to just keep on renting. I would agree, that if you do have the down payment and you do think you could afford it, go for it.
Yeah, and also Dr. MacDonald mentioned earlier that there were other resources available, and I've seen. I'm sure City of Hemet has tons of first-time buyers resources available, if not just near the area. I know City of Paris has that going on right now. So local resources are great to tap in. And I've seen they actually do offer a lot. And if I recall, even some loans too, they might have available, just networking. But yeah, I agree. If you can't afford it, that's fine. Save up for it and work towards it. But I think for my own self, it's better to buy a house too because of the stability.
Yeah.
That's right. You do have to be concerned with the mortgage payment, as Daniel was saying, but if you can cover that, it can be a very good deal.
Absolutely. Now, talking about saving up and like what Daniel Rodriguez was saying when he was in college and going to school, what about right now? What are your thoughts about going to college at this moment? Is it a right time, for a young person? They're just coming out of high school or they're about to be graduating. And what else, if they weren't really into university and college, what other options are there available to be successful in today's economy?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say that even if you feel right after high school, it's not worth it, right? We'll always be there, right? We'll always be at San Bernardino if you're interested. And I do think that's very important to highlight, right? Because we have at CSUSB, we have a lot of students that are in the mid-20s. They spent their late teens, early 20s just working or exploring other options. And then, as they got a little bit older, they were thinking more about kind of longer term, right? They said, okay, I think this is the right time. So that's one thing that I would just say right at the start. We'll always be there. If you want to kind of come check us out later on, that's totally fine, right? Because college can seem intimidating and it's a big time sink, right? But from a professor's perspective, it's usually always worth it, right? You gain skills, you meet new people, you might even discover a new passion. It's really hard to get all of that experience anywhere else, right? Packed into a 2 or 3 or 4 year or 5 year time period, a lot can happen to you, right? And you're just can be bombarded with different interests and different ideas and just being surrounded by different people, younger people who are all kind of similar to you in the sense that they're all trying to think about the future. It's just a great time, right? To explore things and gain skills before you settle down. The cost is usually billed as the big kind of barrier, right? But on that end, it's usually worth it because of the future pay that you get, right? The idea is that you'll be able to earn more after college, and that's true. I don't debate that. Obviously, if you get a college degree, your earnings, the statistics show that your earnings potential usually goes up. But the thing that I actually like to emphasize more than that salary is the job quality, right? As a bachelor's degree owner or a master's degree or a PhD, you have access to much higher quality jobs. For example, I mean, this is kind of like at the extreme end, but I have a PhD, right? And I sit around all day and I do research, right? I talk with students. I talk with Mike and Phoebe, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's
that makes it for a great day right there.
It sure does.
Yeah. It's basically the best job ever, right? And it's all because of the higher education that I put the time into, right? Earlier in my career that I get to do, great things like this. And again, that's an extreme case. You don't need a PhD to get that kind of life, right? Even a bachelor's degree increases your job quality, right? QUALITY significantly. And it can have many other long-term benefits, right? It makes you a more informed voter, right? You don't have to, you can cut through all the rhetoric, all the political rhetoric, right? That said, I completely understand, like I said, if college doesn't seem right to you or right for you, you should still be doing something to invest in yourself, right? That was one of the takeaways from the Hemet Economic Summit. And the reason for that is because, as I mentioned earlier, there are just too many good opportunities out there, right? There's a shortage of blue-collar workers right now, right? So if you want to pick up some handyman skills, that can greatly pay off. With all the advances in AI, you could buy a Chat GPT account, sit there and tell it to give you a curriculum, an accounting curriculum, right? And you can literally work through it with Chat GPT. Chat GPT is $20 a month, or you can get it actually for free by enrolling in a CSU. You can use it to teach yourself anything. It's not just coding, right? Anything Chat GPT can teach you. So there's just so much that you can do these days to invest in yourself that just make sure that you're doing something is what I tell people. But I think, we have a student here, so it would be much more informative to hear directly from the student what he thinks and what his thoughts have been about college. So Daniel, do you have anything to add? So Is college worth it? What do you think?
Yeah, I like this question, because I do think that college can be worth it if you make good use of it. Like I had mentioned before, I took a 2-year gap once COVID hit, because at the time I didn't find college worth it. I personally could not learn by sitting in front of a computer screen all day. But during my time away, I was working full time. I was still trying to excel in whatever it was I was doing. During the time when I started that gap, I was a phone sales representative, and eventually got promoted to territory manager. Eventually, I realized that, the job was not something that I could see myself doing long term. I knew I wanted to go back to school eventually. And so then finally came, the fall of 2023 was when I decided to go back, especially because instruction was now back in person. And one thing I will say that ever since I came back, my effort and determination is much, much greater than where it was before I took my gap. It took personal life experience for me to really, I guess, like wake up and kind of really take advantage of all the resources there are in higher education. And there's like Dr. MacDonald was saying, as long as you're doing something and excelling at it, it doesn't have to be college. I know everybody, especially a lot of people, around my age, they feel like, everybody's going to college, that's something that I should do, but you just got to figure out what it is that you want to do in life and excel at it. So yeah, I mean, I do think college is worth it if you make it worth it. I would question its worth if I were only going to be in college for a piece of paper and not for all the other benefits that higher education has.
I come across a lot of the younger people that always, try to shy away from the colleges, but they also want to try to, own their own businesses. Do you think a lot of the younger generation is capable or actually able to, run their own business in some way, shape, or form? You think you're mature enough to do it?
Absolutely. Sorry. I thought this is for Daniel. Go ahead. Sorry, Daniel.
No, it's okay. One thing I will say with, the younger generation is a lot of us don't want to really be working under somebody. So there are a lot of, small businesses or small little things that, the younger generation have set up. Whether it be just something within their community that they have setting up, like, for example, my sister, she does ceramics and she goes to downtown Riverside and, every so often and sells, the ceramics, it's something small right now that my generation kind of is starting off with. And I think those are just good signs of like what's to come, in the coming decades. That entrepreneurial mindset is definitely present in the younger generation, I would say.
That's good.
I think that's an interesting topic that we're talking about right now. I was born in 1979, so I'm Gen X. I'm right at the cusp of being I'm not a millennial, but I'm right at the cusp there.
One year difference.
So, I've had the experience of a young person, obviously, as everyone has. And I would say, I haven't graduated college, but I do have some college experience. And I will say that back in the younger times when I was in my 20s, I didn't necessarily have the focus or the drive to finish college as I wanted to. But then at the same time, I was forced financially to start working full time. And I didn't realize back then that there might have been other resources than just financial aid and FAFSA and all that, taking loans out to student loans to finish college and stuff. But so now that there's so many other resources available, there's grants and loans and stuff available for young people and middle-aged people. I mean, I've had ex-coworkers who were in their 60s to want to finish their university time and get that PhD and, just to finish their bachelor's or master's. So I think really any time of your life could be a good time if you have that drive and focus, like what Daniel was saying.
I completely agree. There are a lot of resources that are even offered in departments that you might not know about. So, for example, we tell all of our students that we've admitted into our economics department about these, but our department at CSUSB offers 2 $5,000 scholarships. So these are scholarships that we award every year that are based on contributions of donors over the years to the economics department. They've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars. The university takes that money, they invest that money, and then the returns on those investments go to these scholarships that are awarded annually and that provide an amazing amount of support to our students. We also have two $1,500 scholarships. One of those is also endowed. So there are a lot of resources and there are a lot of people that want to help you succeed, right? Even if it's not just financially, there are mentors, right? People that will help you, talk with you through the career process or what you're interested in doing. And so exactly as Daniel was saying, if it's just a piece of paper that you send a check to the university and then 4 years later you get a degree, well, yeah, it's probably not going to do much for you. But there are so many other things. Daniel won't want to say this himself, but he's actually started a nonprofit with a few of his fellow students. It's called votervantage.org. And it's a nonprofit that is seeking to raise awareness of political campaign contributions in the Coachella Valley, and they're quickly expanding outward. So it's a really cool website, votervantage.org. It's got a lot of information on there about politicians and where they receive support, financial support from, and trying to increase transparency so that our democracy can run smoothly. So it's, without the experience of the economics department and talking with fellow students, things like this wouldn't be available. They wouldn't be visible. So there are so many different opportunities, I think, to succeed once you get into the university.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And Daniel, Professor MacDonald, I'm glad that you spoke about Daniel's nonprofit, Voter Vantage. Mike and I, our radio station, we have 2 radio stations. Both of them are nonprofits. And being in the nonprofit sector, it opened up so many doors for funding and grants.
Sure.
So, Daniel, you can look up, I'm sure you already know about it, but we received a grant last year for it was the voter registration education. Oh, I forgot the name. Is it IECC probably?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it was for education and for a voter pool. And I might be wrong in the name, so I apologize. But off the top of my head, I can't remember it. But there's grants available for nonprofits to educate the public and the community doing the civic duty part of that. So that's interesting that you brought that up.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll definitely I'll take a look at those. It's it is very much still in its infancy. But anybody is more than welcome to go check out the website on a desktop. That's votervantage.org, just to kind of take a look and see of the local politicians in the area and who's making those donations, who are their top donors, all that stuff. Because me and a classmate, we believe that voter transparency is something that we see, very important. So, I appreciate Dr. MacDonald for giving us a shout out. But yeah, no, definitely with those grants, that I appreciate you letting me know. We've already kind of looked into some different grants to kind of secure some more funding and get a better website going. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that, Phoebe.
Absolutely. So our last question that we have for Dr. MacDonald, is Riverside County a good place to work and do business?
And play too.
And play, very important. Well, don't forget to check out that skateboard competition, right? Coming to Hemet next month. I know Ben was on you guys' podcast the other week talking about that. But that's such an exciting competition, 3-day event. It just sounds like it's going to be amazing. So yeah, play, I think, is a very important part of all this. Get out there, get outdoors. There's a lot of things to do out in Riverside County. And I do think it's a great place to play. But more importantly, for the egg economist here, it is also a good place to work and do business. Yes, Riverside County is an amazing place to work and invest. There are tons of opportunities out here. It's actually one of the few counties in California that continues to gain population from other parts of California and other parts of the U.S. So several high-paying sectors like financial activities and education, health, and social services industries are growing jobs in Riverside County. And that makes it a great place to do business. We've crunched the numbers on this, and it's true that while California, as you might be aware, is losing some population. We actually lost some representation in Congress recently because of this. This isn't actually true specifically for Riverside County. It's very surprising, but it's very interesting. Californians come from other parts of the state, and people even come from out of state to work and live in Riverside County. One of the most interesting statistics that we crunched on this is the average income of in and out migrants. So people do leave Riverside County, but it's very interesting that, first of all, more people are coming into Riverside County than leaving, but also the average income of people leaving Riverside County is less than the average income of people coming to Riverside County. So that means that overall on net, our county is gaining income. It's gaining demand. And that richness in the market and that richness in demand is what is really a selling point for the county. And that should make anybody take it very seriously. And again, for a broad range of industries, we're not just talking about a one-trick pony here. Riverside County can really do a lot for you and your business. And one of the other reasons why Riverside County is so good is that it offers opportunity and affordability. As I mentioned earlier, the real estate market may not be in the best shape right now because of high interest rates and just overall lack of supply is driving prices up quite a bit. But it's still better here than in many other parts of the country. I was reading an article recently about homeowners in Florida who have recently seen their tax liabilities go up on their home. But, in California, we have Prop 13. Phoebe and Mike, I'm sure you talked about buying a home a while back, and you noticed that your property taxes don't go up in the same way that, somebody might see them go up in Florida or, other parts of the U.S. And so even Texas, right? So Prop 13 is an amazing opportunity for homeowners. There have been tons of studies done on Prop 13 showing that it helps especially older homeowners who may be on fixed incomes continue to own their homes. California's home ownership rate for people in their 70s and 80s, I know that's very far off for most of us, but it's way higher than it is nationally, and that's because of Prop 13. So that's just another reason why I think Riverside County is a good place to work, do business, play, live, whatever you want to do, you can do it in Riverside County. Daniel, did you have anything to add to that?
I feel like you pretty much covered everything. I would have to agree. After attending the Hemet Regional Economic Summit, I'm even more confident now that Riverside County is a good place to work and do business. As Dr. MacDonald said, people are leaving California, but not Riverside County. In the coming years, I do think that we'll definitely see, new developments across Riverside County, especially in Hemet, San Jacinto. It continues to prove that, it's still an attractive place to live for a lot of people. With more people means more demand for everyday products, which is something that I'm sure businesses are eager to deliver on and meet the consumer in that point.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree. Riverside County is definitely the county to be in. I was raised in Orange County. I lived in LA County for a few years of my adult life too. And Riverside County here, Hemet, Paris, there's really no other county because for me, traffic is huge. is a huge barrier. I personally don't like to drive around too much, but traffic in LA County is just ridiculous, and you could get in traffic accidents. My family members have been, I won't say who, but they've been in traffic accidents almost once every 2 years, seem like.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and they live deep in the valley there in LA County. And Orange County, same thing, when I was there, 20 plus, oh my gosh, 20 plus years ago, traffic was just getting bad. And so I'm thankful to be here in Paris. And traffic's bad too, but not as bad as LA and Orange County. And the businesses here, people are there's different caliber of people seem to be a little bit more friendlier. They're not trying to push you out of the way in the store and things like that. So it seems to be a little bit safer. So I definitely agree. Riverside County is the place to be. They're coming here. They're not leaving here.
Yeah, and I'm actually a Paris lifelong resident. I actually grew up here in Paris. I would have been here since '76. Even though I did buy the house out in the desert, but you can tell the difference between Riverside County and San Bernardino County. You can tell quite a bit of difference from when you move away for a little bit, and then when you come back. There's no place like Riverside County to me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. This is Dr. Daniel MacDonald, the Associate Professor and Chair at the Department of Economics at Cal State San Bernardino, and Daniel Rodriguez, Dr. MacDonald's Student Assistant. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and Phoebe. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on, and good luck with everything that you do. And was just so happy to be here. So thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a great experience. Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for having us on.
Thank you. And if you want to contact Dr. Daniel MacDonald, you can find him on LinkedIn, or you can email him at dmacdonald@csusb.edu. And to contact Daniel Rodriguez, Dr. MacDonald's Student Assistant on LinkedIn, find him on LinkedIn at Daniel Omar Rodriguez. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mike and Phoebe Show on Alternative Twist Radio. If you missed any past episodes, just search the Mike and Phoebe Show or Alternative Twist Radio on any major podcast app.